Shoresh! You've heard the word and you get the feeling it might be important. It is important. And today I'm going to talk all about Shorashim on Hebrew Grammar Help. Shalom and welcome back. Today I'll be talking about Hebrew Shorashim. Shoresh is the singular, Shorashim is the plural. The word means root in Hebrew, and it is the basis of all verbs and many, many other words as well. So let's dive right into it. A shoresh is a 3 or 4 letter root that has a basic meaning but is not an actual word and cannot be used in a sentence. The shoresh can be used to create words of many parts of speech, nouns, adjectives, verbs, even prepositions. And all verbs are based on a shoresh, but this isn't true of the other parts of speech. The shorashim are used to create words by fitting them into a template of a sort that might include a few other consonants, but definitely include some vowels. These shoresh families are the basis of my Sunday videos, Hebrew Vocab Boost, and also my TikTok channel, Hebrew Word of the Day. So you should definitely go check those out. So because Hebrew words are written without vowels, whenever we write a non-word such as a shoresh or an acronym or an initialism, we generally use gershayim, which is a double apostrophe. But shorashim can also be written with periods or with dashes in between the letters. Notice that with the periods and the dashes, they're between the first and the second letters and between the second and the third letters of the shoresh. But with the gershayim, they are only between the last two letters. So lamed mem dalet is a shoresh with a general meaning of study or learning. Words with this shoresh all have a lamed, a mem, and a dalet in that order, but with other letters and other various vowels around them. So the shoresh lamed mem dalet gives us lilamod, which means to study or to learn. Lelamed, which means to teach. Lehilamed, which is said of a subject that is taught, to be taught. So Spanish is taught here. Talmud, an important work that we study and learn from. Talmid, a student, someone who learns or studies. Limud, which is study as a noun. And I normally see this one in the plural, limudim. And lamud, which means educated, like an educated person. And so you can see that all of these words have a lamed, a mem, and a dalet, and they are all related in meaning. So that is what a shoresh is. To give an example of how a shoresh fits into a template to make a word, let's use an example from the shoresh that we just looked at, lamed, mem, dalet. And then we'll take an example of a template from the list of words that we saw. This template here, that is the infinitive form of pa'al verbs. Pa'al is a binyan, a group of verbs that share many of the same characteristics, the same ways of conjugating them. So most of them have this template for their infinitive form. And infinitive means the form of the verb that is not tied to a specific person or tense. In English, all of our infinitives have the word to in front of them. So to study, to speak, to learn, to write, all of those. Those are, you're not saying I study or I studied in the past, right? It's to do something. I'm sorry if I'm using a bunch of big words that you're not used to. I do try to keep the videos as simple as possible and not use a bunch of linguistic jargon. But sometimes there is just no way around it. So here is a template for infinitive verbs. And we can see from right to left a lamed with a chirik, and then a green space with a schwa under it. And that green space stands for the first letter of the shoresh. And then we see an orange space, and that's for the second letter of the shoresh. And then a cholamale, a vav that sounds like O. And finally, a purple space, which is reserved for the last letter of the shoresh. So, how do you figure out what the shoresh of a word is? Well, for the most part, you are looking for the three letters closest to the middle of the word. You can often ignore vavs and yods that are in between these middle letters unless they are doubled. If they are doubled, then they are probably part of the shoresh. You want to also ignore any verbal prefixes or suffixes. Here's a list of verb-related affixes to ignore when looking for the shoresh. Some of these are specific to a binyan, a verb type, and others are typical across all binyanim. This list seems pretty long and difficult to keep in mind, but it's not like you have to have the entire list memorized. This is just an aid to help you find the shoresh in any word. And as you learn more and more Hebrew, these affixes will start to become more obvious. And then you won't even consider them when you're trying to figure out the shoresh. And here are the affixes that are typical for nouns. There are a lot fewer of them. And then there are very few for adjectives. The yod ending is very common. Think of the word Yisraeli, Israeli. It has that yod ending to make it an adjective out of a person from Israel, from Yisrael. Yisrael, Yisraeli. And the others are mostly feminine and or plural endings. Besides the extra letters that we learners sometimes accidentally identify as a shoresh letter, there are also shoresh letters that tend to drop out in certain forms. Hey especially drops out or becomes a yud or taf at the end of a word. Vav and yod sometimes manifest as vowels, causing us to incorrectly ignore them. Or they drop out of a word altogether. And nun drops out a lot in the first position of a shoresh. And the missing letters are the worst because you see a word with only two letters that could be its shoresh letters, and it's hard to know what might be missing. If you really need to know a shoresh and you can't figure it out on your own, the Hebrew Academy gives the shoresh of any word that you search, if it has one. And they are the final authority on everything. But payalim.com is also great for giving the shoresh of any word, and it is easier for an English speaker to navigate. But why do we even care about the shoresh? Why should we even try to identify it? Well, firstly, it can help us understand a word that we have not encountered before. If we can figure out the shoresh and then try to put it into some of the templates that we know, we might actually be able to figure out the meaning of a word without looking it up. Knowing the shoresh can also really help us remember a word. Throughout my entire life, I've always known that the Negev is a dry, deserty area in the south of Israel. Now, the word for towel is magevet. And I could never remember this word. I always knew it started with a mem, but I could not remember. I just couldn't remember the word for the life of me. I was always sure that the shoresh must be like mem gimel bet, a shoresh that I don't know any other words in. But then I discovered quite by accident that the shoresh is actually nun gimel bet. It has a nun that dropped out and then a prefix mem. And as soon as I discovered this, I made the connection between magevet, the thing that makes me, my hands, my dishes dry, and the Negev, a very dry place. And after that, I never forgot the word again. And that was, in fact, the impetus for all of my Hebrew related YouTube and TikTok channels. I thought if I could help Hebrew learners see the relationships between all of the words of a shoresh, they might be able to remember new vocabulary easier. And then everything snowballed from there. Also, if we identify the shoresh and we are trying to use a verb that we in a new way that we haven't actually done before, we might actually be able to do it correctly if we identify a problem letter. For example, if we figure out that there is a missing nun and we are trying to use it in a hif'il verb, we can think about how nun affects other hif'il verbs that we know and say a verb that is recognizable to a Hebrew speaker or even correct, possibly. It's all about helping us communicate more quickly and with more accuracy and without having to look up words all the time. So that's it for today. I hope you now understand what a shoresh is and have some ideas of how to find the shoresh of an unknown word and understand the importance of knowing the shoresh of words that you know. And as always, if you have any questions or feedback, leave it in the comments and I will do my best to respond. And also, if you have some aspect of Hebrew grammar that has you flummoxed, let me know and I will try to explain it in a future video. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. Thursday will be another book review, and then on Sunday will be another Hebrew vocab boost. If you haven't checked out the Sunday videos already, definitely check them out after watching this video because you will then start to see the relationship between all of the words that are associated with one shoresh. Or you can just wait for next week's video, which will be an overview of the verbal system. Lehitraot, papa'am haba'a. See you next time.